Boom shakalaka, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters around the world. It is your boy Krishool, aka the Esoteric Noetic, aka the host of the most conscious comedy podcast in the multiverse, the Krishool Journey. Be sure to check it out. All right, so in this video, I wanted to break down a conversational jujitsu session that has been going on the interwebs with one of the biggest masturbators in the classical sense, right? I would say on the interwebs. This is Mehdi Hasan. He is a political activist, a journalist, host of Zateo. And in this Jubilee video, he goes up against 20 right-wing conservatives. And I think this is going to be a juicy one. Let's get it. Progressive versus 20 far-right conservatives.
My next claim is that Donald Trump is defying the Constitution.
Oh, this guy really wanted this one. Ooh! The guy knows how to move for a big man. Let's get it.
Nice to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you, sir.
Mehdi, lovely to meet you.
So I would say that with Trump being anti-Constitution, I don't really care, to be quite frankly.
Okay.
Because in regards...
So he's getting an applaud for that. That's interesting. So it's interesting because the whole notion of these debates is someone makes a claim, and the idea is that you contest that. You contest that his claim is not correct. And the whole idea of going up to contest it is that you're going to put forth a position that is contrary to the position that they put up. For instance, if I say that I think the black guys have the biggest schlongs in the world, then you should go up and you should make an argument, not saying that, yeah, you know, I've been with a lot of black guys and they got some big, you know, schlongs and I feel like they have amazing schlongs. No, you say something completely contrary, like, you know what, I dated this black guy and his schlong was only like 2 inches long, and I think it is a myth, and quite frankly, I think they just got us psyched out in the head. But you don't agree. What? Why are you agreeing? I mean, you're basically saying that you don't care about the Constitution. Who cares? Yeah, so what? I mean, to start off this argument with, I don't care about the Constitution, is a very concerning standpoint. And for a lot of people that say, who cares about the Constitution? I mean, look, you do have a point. I mean, the idea of the Constitution is that it is the law of the land, right? It's like natural law, Rex Lex. In fact, that was the idea behind it. Now, I know you're going to have a lot of constitutional scholars that tell you, no, it's just X and Y, and Supreme Court justices, they make changes and their amendments and so forth. But the basic idea of the Constitution is it's supposed to represent the law of the land in line with the natural law. I mean, its basis is the Declaration of Independence. And look, using this as the prototype here, the fundamental idea of the Declaration of Independence is that we are all endowed with certain unalienable rights, meaning they don't change, meaning that your states, your politicians don't get to suddenly say that, hey, look, we're going to suspend your rights over here because we got a state of emergency. You know, we got this country attacking, or we got this really dangerous virus, and we're going to suspend your rights to be able to defend yourself by taking away things that are not yours, or taking away things that are yours purely because we want to keep everyone safe. That's not how it works. Rights are supposed to be unalienable. We're all endowed with certain unalienable rights: life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, blah, 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 blah. And the Constitution is supposed to represent this. And now, look, I realize that there have been amendments that have taken place and so forth, but my contention is that these amendments should only be able to be passed if they are in line with the fundamental basis of this Declaration of Independence. Right? You can't have amendments come to pass just because the majority of people have decided upon this, whether it's gone through some Supreme Court justice or 51% of the population decided it to be so. I mean, this is one of the concerns that Benjamin Franklin had about the whole idea of democracy, the fact that you'd have mob rule. You'd have a bunch of these peons or people that don't really care for rights, right? Like this understanding of natural rights, obfuscating your natural rights in the interest of the greater good. And you just have a mob rule mentality. And I don't believe that was the intention behind it. And it's interesting that we've moved so far away from this concept over the last few hundred years, right? Now, the Constitution doesn't really mean anything because it's pretty much just the whimsical notions of the generalized population. And often, you know, we're supposed to have these checks and balances like the Supreme Court justices and so forth. But often they're appointed by people, dictators, that simply just want to have what they want. And a lot of times, some of these dictators just don't care, and they will just do what they want, regardless of what the Supreme Court justices say or what the people say, because, you know, they're their will is the law of the land, right? And I think this is on somewhat of a dubious level what we're seeing with Donald Trump. But I guess the real issue here is, should the Constitution still be respected? And let's hear what these guys have to say about it.
In regards to the Constitution is a document that should seek to serve us. Yes. And when it fails to seek to serve us, that can be amended. Laws can be changed. And quite frankly, the fact is, we're defending things in this country that shouldn't be defended.
You see, that's a very subjectivist argument. Like, it seeks to serve us. Who is us? Anytime you make statements about the collective, it's no objective statement. Us is constantly changing. When you say us, you mean the current citizens of the United States of America? I mean, that's constantly changing, right? And what they want. I mean, everyone wants different things. I mean, the idea of changing the Constitution to serve what the people want means that effectively you have a communist system, right? And this is most people don't, I think a lot of people do understand the idea behind the Constitution. They just don't care for it. And people like this, I think, are the classic example. They're just saying, well, it just has to serve us, and if we, the people, decide that we no longer want to honor any of the basic principles of the Constitution, then we should change it. I mean, what's the point of having law, natural rights, or any concept, principles for that matter, if they can be circumvented by the will of the people, which is constantly changing? This is fundamentally what it comes down to. These people don't really care about the Constitution, and they come up with this straw man that ultimately the Constitution is supposed to serve us, which doesn't mean anything.
The First Amendment should not defend pornography and making children and women be victimized.
You see, this is this aesthetic that a lot of ideologically minded people come up with. They try to obfuscate these amendments or these actual rights and say, well, I don't like this because it's doing something that I don't like. Yeah, you may not like pornography, but you know what? People have a right to look at that if they want to. You may not like the fact that people have firearms, but you know what? People have a right to defend themselves if they want to. There's a whole bunch of things that you don't like, but the Constitution in its truest form is supposed to respect those things. Classically, the freedom of speech. This is not something that would need to be even legislated, but so many people get offended by the idea of people just expressing thoughts that it seems that we needed something like that. This is an amendment that I don't think was necessary, but I think so many people in this world have got this obfuscated understanding of rights and natural justice and so forth that they felt the need to prevent people from being able to speak their mind. And eventually, and fortunately at the time, there were enough people that had the sense to actually legislate this, which is not really any kind of thing that need to be legislated. This should all be included within any sane system of law where people have a right to express their opinions regardless of whether or not you like them. Now, someone might say something that is out of hand you may not like. Someone might perform calumny, and you may need to deal with them in a court of law, sue them for damages. That's a whole different thing. But the idea of restricting someone's ability to speak because you don't like that, because you think it's somehow perverse and so forth, this is one of the problems I think the United States and a lot of worlds, the Western world, is plagued with. This idea that, as long as we don't like something and as long as something doesn't help our agenda, well, then we should have the right to prevent it from being.
Making women and children be victimized as a result of that. I think things like blasphemy shouldn't be allowed per the First Amendment. I think
what? What the? So this is, I hear people like this, and I realize that. Like they've said, they don't care about the Constitution, and they don't care about the law. Ultimately, it's like, I have goals, I have my own aesthetic, and I'm going to do whatever I want in order to ensure that is protected. I mean, look, just because someone doesn't believe in your idea of God, so what? Doesn't matter. They should be able to say that, we don't like your God, I think your God is ridiculous and so forth. That's basically just people having an opinion. What are we going to start preventing people from being able to do things like that? People like this really are the problem. They don't get the underlying theme of what this whole thing was about. When I say this thing was about, I'm talking about the mission of the United States of America, 1776. This vision of creating a new America, the New World Order initially, not in the euphemistic, negative, pernicious sense that a lot of people think of it as. Like the vision initially was to actually create a state that represented the ideals of liberty and freedom. And the U.S. has fallen so far away from that over the last few hundred years that people, its citizens, don't respect these basic principles. As they say, what's that classic phrase that is uttered? The tree of liberty needs to be ever so often watered by the blood of freedom fighters, or something to that extent. And I think there is truth to that. It seems as if every once in a while, every few generations, people are so vehemently against the fundamental idea of freedom, of what the United States was built on, right? Like the Constitution in its purest form, that civil wars inevitably seem to erupt, where people need to be reminded that this is what happens when dictators try to gain the upper hand. I mean, the people that have always been on the wrong side of history have always been people that want to censor, that want to restrict people's natural rights, and they do it under this virtuous idea, I'm trying to make the world a better place. No. That makes you the tyrant, bro.
I think that, quite frankly, there are a lot of legal processes that are enabling criminals and bad people to fully enact their will in this country in the name of the Constitution or following the Constitution. So, quite frankly, if Trump is
that is a fair point. The Constitution can be twisted in both ways, but that's when it's twisted. I mean, when something is actually good, you shouldn't need to amend it. You see, I think there have been so many amendments, so many changes, I think, that have taken place over the years to something that was basically just in line with the whole concept of individual natural rights, which we're all endowed with. This whole idea that they come from God, that they're inherent within human beings, which so many people have moved away from now, that there seem to be certain ideas within the Constitution, it would seem, definitely within the law in the United States, that allow bad actors, people to do as they will. I mean, that definitely applies to the U.S. government, being able to suspend the rights of its citizens in order to do X and Y, under the interests of national defense. And that's never a justifiable thing in any kind of country that respects the idea of liberty.
The Constitution good, and I think he should go further.
So this is wonderfully revealing of the modern conservative mindset. So I appreciate you spelling it out so openly. Just checking, do you support the Second Amendment?
I do.
Interesting.
Okay, surprise, I was shocked to hear that. I'm saying that Donald Trump is defying the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the 14th Amendment. He's thinking of defying the 12th and 22nd Amendments. You're saying you don't care about the Constitution, but actually you do, because you quite like the Second Amendment. You just don't like the bits that you disagree with.
Oh, that is such a selling point. You see, this is what is about consistency, right? And it's very easy to look at the Constitution and just take the ones that you like, right? Depending on what your allegiance is. But if your allegiance is towards not the group, it's towards the individual, or the smallest minority, right? Which is the individual. That's what I like to say, right? Because everyone has these groups that they're for. It's like, I'm a Catholic, I'm a progressive, and so forth. But if you're looking at this on the individual level, you say, well, as a human being, we should all be able to do X and Y, and I'm not going to have any bias here. If something is wrong, it's wrong consistently across the board. When you're looking at these things, then it makes it more difficult. When you're looking at this Constitution under this lens, it's more difficult to look at something and then have hypocrisy. But when you're playing this group game, it's like, well, this serves my group, but it doesn't serve their group, so I like that. Oh, I don't like this part of the Constitution because I feel like it's not favorable to the people that I care about, and that's where you get the problem. It's about consistency. The rule of law is supposed to apply consistently across the board to everyone. And that's the beautiful thing behind this idea of the Constitution, that no one is above the law. But it seems people that are caught up in their tribe don't really want to respect this. And, Mehdi, I agree with him here. I don't always agree with Mehdi, but he's making a selling point here. This guy seems to be picking and choosing what he likes.
Can I just be clear on that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm more than willing to amend it and include
whenever
the
it's in
Second
your
Amendment.
favor.
Yeah, absolutely.
So can Democrats do the same when they're in office?
Nope.
What? I mean, this guy's so brass about this. It's like, let me just amend this as long as it's in my favor. But you know what? At least it's refreshing for someone to have that kind of honesty. I mean, a lot of people have this mentality, right, where you can be as evil as you want to be, but as long as you're forward, you're transparent, about it, it's kind of acceptable, right? And look, I don't. I think if you're a douchebag, I don't really care if you're a dishonest douchebag or you're just a douchebag. It's just not cool. There's some people like this guy that are just more transparent about it, you know, and you can make the argument it's not a very wise thing. If you're going to be an evil person, you should at least be like your typical politician and be very duplicitous about it. Pretend that you want something when you want something else, right? Because you'll get exposed, you'll get destroyed, right? But you got to have some respect, at least for his transparent nature. He kind of reminds me of Thanos, right? He was someone that was so honest about what he wanted to destroy half of the world, was so powerful. He was an absolute tyrant, a horrible tyrant, right? But at least he was honest about it, right? And on that level, you can be like, yeah, he's still a douchebag, still deserved to be destroyed, but look, at least he had some level of virtue, right? I mean, I don't care so much for people like this, you know, it's actually frustrating, but it's good because it exposes who they are and what you're dealing with. And I think the problem with a lot of politicians, a lot of people in the world is people don't know what they're dealing with. People often obfuscate their arguments. They give you these convoluted answers like a typical politician or spokesperson for whatever political party. And you get a very unclear, untruthful understanding of what they're striving for. This guy is clearly not that case. I mean, he is openly telling you that he wants a dictatorship.
No, absolutely not. Because
so you don't
it's the
believe
friend
in
enemy.
democracy?
No, I don't. Absolutely not.
What do you believe in?
Autocracy.
By who?
Honestly, quite frankly, anyone who is in line with Catholic teaching.
And there we have it. You see, here's the thing. This is going to throw a lot of people off. Now, what he's saying is obviously disgusting. We can all agree upon that. I mean, and the thing is, the problem is, even if you're a Catholic, you'll probably find out that Catholics are not on board with a lot of things. And there are a lot of things that this guy is going to advocate for that a lot of you may not advocate for. I mean, for instance, I know Nick Fuentes often talks about this. He is a Catholic, but he's got these inherently racist ideas that, look, I think, the races are very, very different, and he has a lot of prejudice towards people based off of their race. Not based on who they are, in terms of their culture or their behavior, but based on who they are, based intrinsically, because of their race. And whereas he may not openly call for it, anytime your worldview is based on that, it's probably going to influence your politics. But this guy's openly just telling you that, look, I'm a Catholic, I have these viewpoints and so forth, and I want everyone to be in line with this, and I want to legislate everything based on my values. And if your values don't align with mine, whether or not you're a Catholic, well, then we have a problem, right? And the tricky thing here is that within a democracy, we allow this idea of people outside of yourself to have a say, right? But classically speaking, regardless of how many people there are, that should not be able to overwrite certain unenable rights, okay? Like, there are certain things that no democratic society should be able to circumvent, but we have a system in play where the majority do circumvent these things time and time again. They say things like, yeah, we believe in rights, but we're going to prevent you from being able to leave your home. We're going to try to coerce you to take experimental magic potions. We're going to tell you that you can't have this weapon and so forth because it's in line with the greater good, right? You can't have that within a truly democratic system, right? And within the classical sense, because democracy in its purest form, what I would define it as a system where, yes, you vote democratically on democratic issues, things that are outside of the natural rights. A lot of people would refer to this as more of a protectorate or a system where it's more of a republic, right? You have some basic natural rights, but then you vote on democratic issues like what we do with our combined resources. But we have a system in play now where the majority try to rule over everything, and it's justifiable, it's understandable to not want to live in a system like that. It's basically mob rule. It's 5 people deciding on whether or not they get to. It's like 5 wolves trying to decide whether or not they eat a sheep, right? That's a good analogy. And the sheep doesn't have any say in the matter. And I personally believe that your natural rights should be respected regardless of how many people there are or what levels of power you have. That idea is actually more in line with the true principles of democracy. So in terms of a democracy, yeah, depending on how you define it, I think you may or may not need one. But you certainly should not have a system where a group of people get to decide on things that violate people's natural rights. That's a recipe for a complete and utter insanity that we've seen time and time throughout history.
Donald Trump is not Catholic.
Of course, he's not.
And the frustrating thing is it seems that so many of these people are in line with this, and, like, there's this weird spectrum between conservative, far right, and so forth. And, I mean, I would define it, look, conservatives and progressives are, classically speaking, they're, one, progressive deals more with collectivist justice, so the idea of the greater good for the greatest amount of people, with extreme form being communism and so forth. And conservatism, I would say classically it leans a bit more right, but it still has what I would say is some very leftist ideals, the idea of sacrificing the individual right for the greater good, whether that is to restrict people's ability to take on substances that they want for the greater good to prevent problems in the society, or certain kinds of sanctions and so forth. They're both tyrannical, but it seems that the extreme form of far-rightism, if you want to call it that, is this idea of nationalism, this idea of group thinking where we care more about our nation state than anyone else does, and as a result, we're going to preclude anyone that's not aligned with the values of our nation state based on a people, a race. It's more of this racist form of conservatism, so to speak. That's how I would look at it. Feel free to correct me if you think I'm wrong, but it seems more focused on the idea of nationalistic tendencies, this ethno-state. We need a state based on people that look like ourselves, whereas the left progressively, the left classically, not classically, but I would say more recently, are definitely more about greatest amount of good for the greatest amount of people, but also have this attitude of groupthink, but wanting to protect the rights of minorities and being more inclusive, diversity, and so forth, which seems to be ideally a virtuous thing, but can also be very destructive when it aims to circumvent the rights of the individual for the greater good. If you want to give opportunities to the minorities, I think that's a beautiful thing. But as soon as you start taking away people's rights in order to do that, that's when it becomes an issue. Anyway, they're my thoughts on that. Let's move on.
I completely agree, and that's part of the problem.
You don't support Trump?
No, I don't. I didn't even vote for him. I wrote in like John Pork or someone. I can't even remember.
Why did you vote if you don't believe in democracy and you want autocracy?
Well, because quite frankly, I voted. I kind of voted just to.
I came with this argument, but I'm bored of my own argument. I'm much more interested in this. So
yeah, absolutely.
How do we get to an autocracy?
I think, quite frankly, that if we are able to enact local leaders.
Who is the we, by the way?
I think, quite frankly, these far-right conservatives sitting right around
White
me.
people?
Yeah,
no
absolutely.
So,
well, actually, I have quite.
Some of the people in this room don't make the cut from what I can see visually.
Actually, hold on for a moment. I do think that there are people who happen to not be white who do actually have history in this country and have roots in this country. For instance, from the Mexican-American War, we subsumed a lot of territory of people who have far stakes in this country who happen to be Hispanic or what have you. I'm for defending the traditional demographics of this country, which is majority white, and should stay that way.
How does the United States...
I can have some level of sympathy only in that, and bearing in mind, I'm carrying no water for this guy over here, only in that trying to make this purely about race, right, which I think most of us, whether you're on the left or you're on the right, look at least in the last 50 or so years, as being very cringeworthy, disgusting, right? The idea of assigning any kind of morality based on someone's inherent, race, something they cannot control, they cannot change, that's not only unwise, but stupid, and arguably... I wouldn't say it's immoral, but it's just disgusting. Personally, that's what I think about it. It's weird, but at least he's making the case here that someone that has a strong tie to a particular land, to a particular area, then they should be able to have more control over what goes on within that country. That seems at least to be somewhat more reasonable from a political stance. That doesn't mean I necessarily agree with it, but at least he's making that argument a bit more pronounced.
We've gone so off topic, but how does the United States look like under you? Sorry, what's your name?
My name is, my name's Connor. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Took a little bit of a doubt there.
Interesting, he hesitated, which makes me think perhaps he's not confident about owning this publicly. But obviously, no, that can't be the case, because this is public TV. I might say this. Actually, I wouldn't say this. Let's just be very clear. I say a lot of crazy shit, all right? Believe me, I say crazy shit, right? But I don't have views like this. But if I was going to say some of my crazy ideas, I'd say it in the comfort of my own home to my friends or to people that I know are probably on the same wavelength as me. I wouldn't say this on a public environment where millions of people around the world, right? Because I might get in trouble. I might have, I don't know, the U.S. government want to drop drone bombs on me or something like that, right? But the fact that this guy is saying this shit so openly would lead me to think, okay, so he obviously must know of the repercussions of what he's doing, what he's saying, all right? I would only presume.
Well, I use a pseudonym online.
Fair enough.
But fair enough.
How would Connor's America look? What would it look like?
Well, quite frankly, I think we would deport people who shouldn't be here.
No, I didn't ask about deporting. What does the government look like?
What does the government look like?
Yeah.
I would say, quite frankly, it's under a sort of benevolent leader, such as
Where does he
Franco.
come from?
It could be a kind of aristocratic class. Could be someone
Who picks the autocrat?
Frankly, the people. I mean, we could hold a vote on it. Kings were.
This is the problem I have with the entire model. It's like we need to have someone dictate everything that goes on. Look, I understand it. Like on some level, yeah, you want to have people that can at least influence but they should not be speaking on your behalf in terms of dictating what you do. I believe in the idea of maybe a direct democracy, right, where we all get to vote. I mean, this is on democratic issues, not on voting on whether or not you're entitled to my freaking kidneys, right, that some communists seem to be a fan of, right, or, oh, well, no, we only want to apply that to your resources and so forth. No. Like, I'm all for direct democracy. Let's vote on things where everyone actually gets to decide, rather than having one individual that is supposed to represent me. I mean, this guy, what politician represents you on every issue? Clearly none, right? But you go vote, right? And the idea is that everything, at least some people subscribe to this idea, now everything that they are doing, these politicians that you voted for, are representative of what you want. No. A lot of the times, it's kind of like you're trying to mitigate the potential outcome. You're saying, well, I like this candidate better than the other candidate, so I'm probably going to vote for this person, even though I don't like the fact that he's doing all this other shit. But in terms of one leader representing you, I find that such a very weird concept. And anyway, they're my thoughts on that.
Isn't that democracy?
Well, sure. You can have a vote to get to that state.
And then no more votes afterwards.
Absolutely.
Hey, well, I mean, I would just say let's not have one person in charge that controls everything that we do, period, because people are verbs. They change, right? Like, the idea that you're going to have one person and he's going to be consistent across the board and always be in line with what you think is completely ridiculous. And it's just as ridiculous as saying that, look, you can have a vote every few years and the new person is going to be more representative of what the country or what you feel at that time. How about none of that? How about we all just have certain universal principles, right? And people can see to this idea, regardless of what I may want in this world, I don't get the right to trample other people's rights. As long as you have a society, right? As long as we have this political game where we have groups battling each other, we're always going to have violence, right? Because we cannot agree on this underlying theme that as much as we should all work together, strive to be thinking about the collective, we have to respect the basis of people's natural rights. People can't do that because they see everything as a threat. They think we live in this, and it's true, on some level, we live in this society where everything touches on everything else. So as soon as you get something, as soon as you're wealthy and you're getting more money than me, that affects me, that takes away my resources, therefore I'm entitled to your resources, and I'm entitled to restrict you from being able to use she, they pronouns and so forth because that affects the way in which I perceive reality. Stop it! Stop it!
Wow.
100%.
Wow. And if that autocrat kills you and your family, you're fine with that?
Well, I'm not going to be a part of the group that he kills because that's the whole thing.
How do you know?
Carl Schmitt
Autocrats tend to kill everyone.
You don't know that, bro. Anytime someone makes an appeal towards what's going to happen, it's an opinion. You can't know that. That is an evaluation, not an observation. I mean, it's like saying that I'm going to live forever and I'm always going to win every conversation that I start. Maybe, but come on, man.
Schmitt makes this point very well in his work. It's the friend-enemy distinction, right?
Carl
liberals,
Schmitt, the Nazi theoretician.
Yeah, absolutely.
The friend-enemy distinction. This is something I'm actually new to. Is that the enemy of my enemy is my friend? Which is something I don't subscribe to, right? Because it's like, let's say if Goblin's Lord. Let's say if Hitler is in a war with the United States of America, right? Now I believe it or not, I have a lot of criticisms about Hitler. Okay. At least we have some things in common. I mean, apparently the guy liked dogs, right? But who doesn't like dogs? Okay. But there's a lot of look. There is a lot to criticize. Let's look up. I use that as an extreme example. Now, just because he's going against the United States, which let's be very clear about this, have been a thorn in the side of the free world for quite some time now. I mean, these guys are responsible. I'm sorry to say this, America. I mean, by all means, I practically am an American. Even though I'm not. But I subscribe to so much of the culture and so forth. So I'm going to include myself in this, right? So no arguments of like you're being racist and so forth towards Americans over here. I think American culture is cool in a sense. If you like popping caps in people's asses. But the point is, I would have an issue with Hitler, even if he was going up against the United States of America, right? Because just because you're fighting something that I am very much in line with, we're both working towards getting rid of something that, and I would say America as an idea is still something that is beautiful, but there's so much evil that is taking place in terms of the laws that the country has embedded in its legal system, and as so much as the devastation that they commit towards so many black and brown people around the world, and their support of Israel and so forth. But don't get me started there. Yeah, I'd be happy to see another country go against it, but it doesn't mean I'm in line with that other country. Anyway, that's besides the point. That's another note here. But the friend-enemy distinction, pray tell, what is that?
I don't care.
Are you a fan of the Nazis?
I frankly don't care being called an.
He had to bring that up as well. We always go to the most extreme thing in the last 100 years. Anytime we're trying to use an analogy, right? Great minds think alike. The Nazis.
Nazi.
I didn't say that. I didn't actually say that. I said, are you a fan of the Nazis?
Well, they persecuted the church a little bit. I'm not a fan of that. But
what about the persecution of the Jews?
Well, I mean, I certainly don't support anyone's human.
Maybe that is the friend-enemy distinction. All right. Maybe it is a case of like, my enemy is my friend.
Dignity being assaulted. I'm a Catholic.
But you don't condemn Nazi persecution of the Jews.
Of course you do.
I think that there was a little bit of persecution and stuff like that, which is bad.
Yeah. Look, this isn't a look at the epistemology of what went on there. I mean, look, you can dispute the details, the figures in regards to what happens. That just has to do with awareness. We all have different looks in that. But from a fundamental value basis, I think most of us would agree that if you violate or gas people, children that are obviously innocent and so forth, it's not cool. Now, granted, if you're very insanely gifted in your legal abilities, you can make some argument that, these people did X and Y and so forth and try to make them complicit, but you're only going to sound like a disingenuous psychopath if you try to make that argument in case of what happened, at least with some of the Jews there, right? But I find it very telling when this guy does not at least want to acknowledge. I mean, when people try to get you to acknowledge things that are horrible just in order to support their argument, just let them have it. Like the whole Hamas-Israel thing, when people say, well, do you support him? No, I don't support any kind of violence. But I can still criticize a bad person that is doing something that I'm not in line with. Like, why is it so hard for people to give anything? I feel like it only makes you seem like a disingenuous person if you can't at least acknowledge the other side of the argument or give someone a win when they're making a point that is true. Granted, their overarching argument may be complete nonsense, but at least give Mehdi this, that yes, what the Nazis did, at least supposedly, right? If they did that, and I'm assuming they did, was atrocious. How hard is that to acknowledge?
In this show, because you're a little bit more than a far-right Republican.
Hey, what can I say?
I think you can say, I'm a fascist.
Yeah, I am.
That's a very interesting laugh. And as soon as he got up there, he was embracing this whole idea, hey man, I just want to have my 60 seconds of fame here and tell to the world that I am far-right, I'm a fascist, I'm a far-right conservative, and these are my views. And I mean, look, here's the thing. We all have views that we're willing to die for. Well, when I say we're willing to die for, I wouldn't take on that stance on it, but we're very outspoken about them, right? But I'm not an idiot. I'm not going to go out in public, right, and say something. For instance, if I went to a synagogue, right, I wouldn't proclaim to the entire synagogue that, look, these are my views on Palestine. I'd just keep it to myself, all right? There's no need to rock the boat. If I often find myself in situations, when I go on dates, right? Like, I may disagree with, certain viewpoints that women have, but unless they push it in my face, I just don't say anything. Like, there's no need to particularly when you're in a position where the repercussions of what you're saying are abysmal. And look, I understand the perspective that, look, you need to speak the truth, particularly in matters where there are innocent lives involved. I think more than the vast majority of people, I tend to do that. That's one of the reasons I make content on these controversial issues, because I am trying to make a statement about things that I think need to be spoken about. Sometimes it's just enjoying the conversational jujitsu and whatnot. And, as Martin Luther King once said, to live a life where you are silent about things that matter it brings about this silent death. There's something that happens to your soul when you don't have the courage to speak, even if your voice shakes, about things that matter to you. And it's very liberating when you do that. You charge your voice with adulation, and metaphysically, you become stronger and stronger the more that you stand for something that you believe in. It may not show it. Granted, when we work out, it shows within our muscles and so forth, but within our spirit is emboldened anytime we speak truth to power. And that's an exercise that I think we should maintain. But that being said, we also need to have a bit of discernment when it comes to this kind of stuff. Like, sometimes, not every battle needs to be fought. You don't need to attend every argument you're invited to. And this is a situation where, granted, I don't feel that way. I'm not a fascist. At least I don't think I am. I am actually, I don't even think I understand enough about what fascism is, but assuming it's dictatorship and so forth, right? I think the underlying idea is being able to use whatever tools are at your disposal in order to achieve a particular end. That's very much something I'm not in line with. My approach to this thing is, like, there are certain things that you just cannot do, period. Now, I also believe that there are certain things that, regardless of the greater good, you shouldn't be able to circumvent, like natural rights. I don't believe in trying to enforce my will on people just to get to a particular result, right? Just on an issue because I think it's the best for the greatest amount of people. There are certain principles that should be upheld, and I think you should stand by them. But that being said, which is immaterial to my point, you need to be mindful of what you are saying in situations like this, and particularly when it's not something I think that needs to be stated there. But then again, look, the guy was asked a direct question. He gave a direct answer. Maybe he is a fascist, and maybe he is trying to bring about the idea that there's nothing wrong with being a fascist. And, often all it takes is a few people to stand out and actually say something quite fearlessly, and enough people become emboldened. And there are definitely certain things where that needs to be the energy that people come to with it. But, I don't feel as if this is one of those issues.
Absolutely.
I'm just checking who's clapping just to get my set of where everyone is on this. Because you know that millions of people are going to be watching you on YouTube and checking out who the fascists and the Nazis are.
I'm not ashamed of that whatsoever.
No, clearly you're not.
During the pre-war period, prior to World War II, it was only those parties that properly enacted the people's will. That's why they won. The conservatives were fat cats. They were aristocrats. They didn't care.
Are you in favor of killing people who aren't like you?
Quite frankly, I'm not.
You mentioned Franco earlier. Franco killed a lot of innocent people.
Oh, well, he killed communists. He killed people who raped nuns and killed priests.
What about children who he killed and women who he killed?
What are you talking about? He never killed any women or children. He was Catholic,
He only killed combatants. Is that what you're claiming?
Yeah, he only killed combatants.
Never killed any innocent people.
The White Terror was only punishing those people who did acts of terrorism. And again, are you supporting, like, raping innocent women? Nuns, dude. Killing priests? I mean...
Okay, at least this guy knows his history. Now I'm actually really interested on fascism, because I'm not sure if I'm understanding the definition, at least as it is currently defined denotatively, or at least according to Google, which is not that reliable. But fascism is a far-right, authoritarian, ultra-transnationalist political ideology characterized by dictatorship, power, forcible suppression of opposition, and strong regimentation of society and the economy. It typically involves a belief in national or racial supremacy. Now that I'm not in line with, obviously not. An emphasis on militarism and a rejection of democracy, liberalism, and socialism. Well, I reject liberalism and socialism, and these are inherently immoral concepts if they deprive people of their natural rights. And I also apply that to conservatism, right? So it comes down to how you're defining this stuff. You could also say that about democracy. The issue I have with at least this definition of fascism is that it's trying to apply ends justifies the means, right? So complete authoritarianism in order to enact certain things that I'm not in line with, okay? Like, it depends what you're trying to enact. I believe there's nothing wrong in being fascist, right? If you're using my definition, which is using whatever political tool is at your disposal, right? In order to prevent people from violating people. So killing, raping innocent people, innocent children. Can we all agree that it's absolutely wrong to kill innocent, like, babies, right? And I think you should be able to use the political system, right? And to an extent, when I say ends justifies the means, I don't think it's a right to kill any innocent people. But when this is fundamentally a war. This is what a lot of people lose sight of. Regardless of what your position is, whether you are a liberal, a socialist, or anarcho-capitalist, we are fighting in values here. This is the political agenda at play. And we're both using different tools in order to enact that. Now, there are some people that try to use the tools of democracy, but in all honesty, they don't always do that. Sometimes they use money, they use deception and other tools in order to enact their will. And fascists is essentially saying, yeah, we believe in these values. Now, I think their values, a lot of them, are absolutely disgusting. And we're willing to do whatever is at our disposal in order to achieve that. So ultimately, there's this battle, right, where both sides are using whatever tools they can in order to enact their will. And the real question, I think, is not whether or not you're willing to do these things, because I think both sides do this. Some are more openly psychopathic about it, openly talk about how they're going to do this, and others are more political. They're more political in the sense that they will lie to your face and tell you that they are honoring the democratic process, but ultimately they are trying to circumvent the natural rights of people and do that through any means necessary, all right? The real question is what you're fighting for. Is that value actually good, pure, and true, and representative of the actual moral inherent goodness of something, or it's just some aesthetic viewpoint you have that, people are not allowed to think that they're better than me because I am the superior race. And that's the real question to play. Now, of course, we can all use different definitions and so forth, but that's my understanding of it. Like, fascism is a political tool that is used in order to achieve a particular end. Now, it associates with certain traits that I think are morally repugnant. But that being said, I could say the same thing about the many of the tactics that the left tend to use in order to enact their will. I think trying to use the democratic process in order to enact things is just as reprehensible if you're trying to enact, for instance, a policy that tries to force people to undergo experimental potions through the will of the people. If you want to have a mob rule mentality where we vote that the vast majority of people that are white get to enslave the black people. Now, I think we would all take issue with that, right? Now, you could say, hey, look, we use the democratic process in order to enact this. And I would say, that doesn't really make it right, though, does it?
I mean, priests don't brandish guns and kill
people. You
people.
just refuse to condemn the Nazi Holocaust, my friend. I don't think you're in a position to ask anyone any questions.
I quite frankly don't care what you think about me. If I'm a Nazi and being a Nazi,
is mutual,
if being a Nazi means upholding human dignity, because I even believe in your dignity. I don't. In a state that I was running.
Being a Nazi, I mean, bro, I understand what you're saying here, but you're kind of contradicting yourself. I mean, if being a Nazi involves upholding your dignity, I mean, the thing is, being a Nazi, at least in my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that it wouldn't involve upholding your dignity, because the Nazis, they didn't believe in the natural inherent goodness of individuals. They did believe in this racial supremacy attitude. In fact, they believed in what I would say is the classical fascist mentality, nationalism, supremacy of the Aryan race and so forth, and that's what made them inherently evil. However, if they were, let's say, my idea of good fascists is that they would respect people's inalienable rights and the right of not sacrificing babies and violating people, and they would do this under any means necessary if it didn't involve actually violating other people, right? That's what we call the rule of law. That's what we call natural law. That's what is supposed to be the basis of the Constitution. But the problem is so many people like this guy try to invert things and say, hey, look, we have a new idea of what is going to be good, and we're going to use whatever means is necessary to enact that.
I wouldn't want to hurt you or anything like that, but quite frankly,
I don't debate fascists.
Okay. So do you concede then? I mean, why?
Do I concede you're a fascist who won't condemn the Nazis?
Yeah.
Yes, I concede that.
Okay, great. So I mean, what are we doing here? Because I mean,
I think that's one area that Mehdi kind of. I mean, I would critique him on his approach to that. Like, I don't debate fascists. I mean, you could easily say, well, look, I don't debate socialists or leftists, because ultimately your viewpoint is inherently moral as well. I mean, and look, we all have different values. And look, I'm going to be honest. I think the fascist mentality this guy has is morally repugnant. But if I'm going to be consistent across the board, it's very easy to say that about many ideologies, because regardless of what your political ideology is, chances are, unless you're someone that does does believe in the actual inherent rights of individuals, then you're going to be an aggressor. You're going to be someone that is not looking at this fairly. And it's basically you versus the other political parties here. And the only way that we at least try to mitigate these problems is by having conversation. I mean, this is the whole idea of freedom of speech, healthy marketplace of ideas. We'll at least try to get an understanding of what other people are thinking in order to bring about an efflorescence of consciousness. Unless we have these conversations, it won't come about. But it's easier said than done. Like anyone, I get frustrated as well, and it's very easy though to say I'm not going to talk to you because I hate your ideas. But it takes a lot of courage to actually step into the arena and say, I'm going to confront you even though I disagree with you, and I'm still going to try to have a modicum of respect for you, but vehemently disagree with what you're saying. But that being said, I will still maintain this civility.
You just seem offended.
What you're doing here,
you just seem offended, to be quite frankly. Like,
I'm offended by people who can't condemn the Nazis. Yes, I am.
Okay. Well, I condemn the evils that they did, but I don't really care about
Jews?
being. Yeah, sure. I don't care about being called a Nazi.
Sure.
Is the whole thing.
I never called you a Nazi.
I care
You
about
called
doing
yourself
the right
a Nazi,
thing.
a fascist, and a general.
That's an interesting point there, because here's the thing. It's so easy to get caught up in the group. Like, we know that collectively the Nazis did horrible things, right? But then we have to look at what their ideology was. And please, pray tell, like what was the idea? Because if the ideology was, supremacist, fascist ideas and so forth, it makes sense for you to condemn the Nazis. But if you're just looking at a group of people, within any group of people, there are good people and bad people. You could say that, the blacks, I condemn the blacks, what they did, because let's say some blacks did some horrible things. They were popping caps in people's asses rather than projects, right? Now, are you going to condemn the entire black race? Obviously not. Obviously, we're dealing with a race here. But for any political ideology, whether it is socialists, Democrats, and that's essentially what the Nazis, in a sense, were, or whether it was any movement, feminists and so forth, they're good, they're bad, there's a tendency, there's a majority of people that act a particular way. But I always try to talk about the underlying essence of what that ideology, that ism, perpetuates, what it actually stands for, as opposed to looking at this in terms of what the majority stand for. Because I don't think it's a good conversational approach to denigrate an entire group of people by saying something pernicious about them, i.e. the blacks, they're horrible people, they're always killing people. The Jews, they're the reason for all the horrible things in the world. The Nazis, I hesitate. Because I have been programmed, like most of us, and I think rightfully so, to view them as being horrible people. But I'd have to look at what the party stood for. If I'm looking at it from the perspective of people, were all of the Nazis bad? Do they all do bad things? I don't know. Is the organization bad? Absolutely. Absolutely. But am I referring to a group of people, or am I referring to the idea, the underlying essence of what that organization stood for? And I would invite people to look at that. If they feel obliged to get frustrated and want to comment and talk about how I don't know what I'm talking about. I may not know what I'm talking about in terms of my definition, understanding of these things. We all have somewhat of a obfuscated understanding sometimes of actual meanings to words. But in terms of my logic, my rationale here, it is that based on my understanding of what I deem these parties to be, I don't want to be making overarching generalizations. And I think there's something to that. That being said, let's not. You're not going to be winning many people over by saying that you don't have a problem with the Nazis. That's for sure. If I'm being realistic about this, in the same breath.
Well, yeah, I am a General Franco supporter. He was awesome. He was so super cool, quite frankly.
At least this guy knows his stuff. I mean, I actually don't know who General Franco was. Maybe I need to brush up on my American history. But I'm going to assume that this guy was not someone that you'd want to support by the tone of Mehdi Hasan. And I don't always support, in fact, a lot of the times I don't support what Mehdi Hasan is putting out there, but...
because the whole
thing... And you don't believe in democracy?
I don't believe in democracy.
What are you doing here?
I don't think that's that crazy a statement. I mean, look, depending on how you define democracy, crying out loud. But anyway, let's go on.
Televised debate. This is democracy. Don't want to debate and disagreement.
Because it is the...
This is a debate. I mean, I think it's totally fair to not define democracy encapsulating speech and discourse and all that kind of stuff. Maybe your definition of democracy is just you don't believe in mob rule. You don't believe in the majority of people deciding that they get to drop bombs on innocent babies, and therefore you don't support democracy. I don't know. Get him to clarify what his definition is. Don't be using these tactics like, I don't want to talk to you because you don't believe in democracy. You're a fascist. I mean, let's get to the heart of what this guy actually believes.
Means to support an end. The reason we have free speech now is because we want to be openly talking about our opinions so we can get the state that we want. But it doesn't mean upholding free speech after we win. Again, I mentioned
the only good thing about this fascist moment we're in is that you guys are so open about it.
You know, one of the things that I find refreshing about this is at least it shows you the true nature of what, I wouldn't say just this political system, but a lot of political systems are. Because I would say the main distinction between this fascist here and a lot of the right-wingers, at least, I don't want to generalize, at least with this guy, let's just say that, is that this guy is like Thanos. He is just super open and transparent about what he wants. However, a lot of people aren't. They are still striving to achieve their political ends, but they will lie to you like politicians. They will say how they're going to get this once they're in power, but they'll do the exact opposite. That's what the political landscape is generally about. And I guess it's somewhat refreshing when you see someone that is actually just going to tell you what he wants. But people like that typically are not going to get into power because most of us see them for who they are. And it takes a very stoic, galvanizing personality to be able to speak the truth in regards to what they want, and also to sway enough people in the most beautiful way. And there have only been a few leaders that have managed to do this kind of stuff, you know. I mean, regardless of what position you take, there are always going to be people that do not like you. But, I think it's very difficult within a system where it is so contrasting. We see the distinction between the left and the right have never been so further apart. Back in the 50s, I think they were closer. You listen to the kind of debates people have, and they had these basic, for a large part, I would argue, some unifying ideas in the respect for freedom and so forth, but now it's just on completely different ends. I find that anyone that is even remotely respecting individual rights is called a far-right person. And on the contrast of that, anyone that even believes in any sense of equity or redistribution of wealth or collective justice, even on issues dealing with the environment, right, which are more intangible and things like that, is considered a far left person or a communist and so forth. So it becomes very jaded how we label people, and it is a difficult playing field if you were taking on one of these positions of being a right-winger or a conservative, and a lot of the times you just get lumped into a category even when you're not, like myself. I don't subscribe to either of these categories whatsoever. I absolutely believe in the idea of sovereignty, of individual rights, natural justice, natural rights, call it what you will. I'm a human and animal rights activist. I often tell people this, but then they always try to twist my words and tell me, oh man, you're just a right-winger, you're a racist, or you're some vegan extremist leftist.
The whole
reason I mentioned Carl Schmitt earlier, and you kind of blew past him, is the friend-enemy distinction. Even liberals, when they take power, they want to enact policies and they want to enact protections for their people and their ideas, and they're willing to punish.
That's a good point. So if I'm to if I'm to give a bit more credence, because I actually am ignorant, I've never heard the friend-enemy distinction before, and I don't subscribe to the idea that just because something comes from a person that did bad things, that thing must be bad. I don't subscribe to that at all. Hitler would have said certain things I agree with. Any person, for that matter, in their life has probably said things I agree with. So I'm not going to just say Carl Schmitt, whoever his name is bad, therefore anything that comes out of this guy's mouth must be ridiculous. Let's have a look at the friend-enemy distinction. Friend-enemy distinction. All right. I'm going to assume that this probably makes some sense based on what I've heard this guy talk about thus far. In the context of political thought revolves around a core concept. The friend-enemy distinction is the defining characteristic of politics, where the enemy is not simply a personal adversary, but someone perceived as an existential threat to one's own group or political entity. This framework, popularized by Carl Schmitt, emphasizes the grouping and differentiation between us and them as the foundation of political identity and action. Okay, seems like a very poignant observation in regards to reality. Here's the more detailed explanation. Friendship as the context is not merely about personal affection or positive social interaction, but rather it represents a relationship of unconditional trust and shared interest within a group of community. The enemy, conversely, is not just someone who disagrees with you or has opposing views, but someone who is seen as a potential threat to the group's existence, safety, or values. Yeah, welcome to the political spectrum. I mean, most people in the political world are going to be your enemy on some level, because even though you may like them as an individual, their viewpoints, their worldview is going to be in contrast to yours. Therefore, that's actually a valid point, the friend-enemy distinction. What if I quote that because I have knowledge of that? That makes me a bad person? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but the impression I got from this entire dialogue here was Mehdi, and I might be mistaken in the way in which I perceive this, but Mehdi taking issue because he made reference to friend-enemy, that concept, and that being something of Carl Schmitt. Taking issue with the concept. The concept is not good or bad. It's just an awareness, an observation in regards to how to classify people in the political world. I don't like that game, but it makes sense. If you're playing chess, you want to understand what strategies are, right? The idea of having an understanding of something doesn't make you a bad person. It's how you implement it. So this idea of, wait a sec, you come up with something, you quoted something that is from someone that I consider really bad, and even you being aware of that now makes me define you as being a bad person. If that's the kind of logical reasoning that you apply, then I consider that to be not only unwise, myopic, but a little stupid. And look, maybe I'm misrepresenting the perception of how at least Mehdi was looking at this, but that's my understanding of it. Now, I don't know much about Carl Schmitt. You can't possibly know about every single character in history, but the fact of the matter is that there is going to be horrible things any individual has done. And when people move into this territory of, well, you picked someone and I know he's done bad things, therefore that's really dubious. Anytime I bring up someone like Martin Luther King or Gandhi or Rosa Parks, people are so quick to mention certain slightly distasteful things that these people have done. I'm like, so what? Who cares? I mean, you could apply this to anyone. I'm making an argument that this person has done something that I agree with. The fact that they have done other things that I don't agree with, that's human nature. That's humanity. People are verbs. People are not inherently good or bad in their core. I mean, it's more gray than that. I mean, you can kind of say that in a sense. Like, I think someone like, let's be honest here, like a Martin Luther King would be subjectively a better person than, let's say, Hitler, all right? But we have to look at things distinctly in terms of what they did, as opposed to trying to play this game of they're inherently good or bad because of X and Y based on one action. People are more complicated than that. People are like verbs. They're constantly changing, and it's a very subjectivist, one-dimensional perspective if you look at things in terms of a Boolean. They're good or bad. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there.
Punish their enemy. And so I'm the same way. I'm like, hey, if you're going to punish me, I'm going to get in power, and I'm going to frankly punish you when you try to leverage power against me. Just that simple.
That's actually not something I would agree with. I would say the higher path is not to persecute people just because they've chucked stones at you, but it's at least understandable that someone would take on that attitude. But the way that Mehdi's looking at him like, oh, that's a weird, really thought. I think a lot of people have that attitude. They just don't openly say it. He's just so brash about it. It's like there are so many people in the world. I mean, the very political agenda is characteristic of the fact that people are at war with each other. It's just we have this notion that, we're so civil, but ultimately people are at war. The only thing that's happening now is we're not using actual kinetic warfare in order to resolve these disputes. We're trying to do that through dialogue, through conversation, right, which is obviously a much better alternative. But to think that people, if they can get in power, are not going to try to implement these values, these beliefs that they have, I mean, that would be somewhat ignorant. And I think it happens on both sides. If you were in the political game, if you were into politics, they're probably trying to do that. That's why I don't, as much as I am interested in the political landscape, I don't do politics. I don't do my group versus your group. I don't do any of that shit. I'm not black versus white. I'm not man versus woman. I'm not into that misandry. I'm not into that misogyny. I'm not into my country is better than your country, the West versus the East. It is so much more relaxing and beautiful to be able to criticize the hell out of it all. And when people start saying, what about black people? I'm like, yeah, you're right. Black people did some horrible things as well. It's like, Then they're shocked. It's like, what side are you on? I don't have a side. I'm on the side of truth. But when you play this group mentality game of like my side versus yours, tribe wars, then it gets really messy and people lose face, and it leads to a very hypocritical standpoint. Anyway, I think by that look on Mehdi's face, it's probably the first time I've seen him do this. He seems to be like openly okay. He just allow this guy to expose himself rather than usually Mehdi is just after question making statements and trying to make someone sound like an idiot. But this guy, at least ostensibly, has made himself look very unappealing. Big guy over here. And I think as a result, Mehdi feels as if his work doesn't really need to be emphasized.
I'm not sure what you want to say.
Hey, it is what it is.
All right. Pause. You've
Wow.
been voted out by the majority. Please return to your...
That was probably the most heated conversation I've seen on Jubilee before. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, let me know what you think in your comments below. Do you believe in democracy? Do you believe in the Constitution? Are you left-wing, right-wing, conservative, pro-Trump, pro-freedom? Are you a human or are you superhuman? Are you white power, black power? Let us know in the comments below. Until next time, remember there are 3 things that cannot remain hidden for long: the sun, the moon, and the wisdomatic truth bombs of yours truly. Ow! Peace!